What do you think you are seeing now? Letters on screen, a video on YouTube. You believe you are here because you chose to be. Let me tell you something you might not want to hear. All this is one theater. Your name, your memories, your certainties. One fascinating scenario for you to believe exists. But if you stop to think, there is something wrong. There are times when life seems like a cheap trick. Have you ever felt it? That weird feeling when a memory comes out of nowhere and you wonder if it really happened. Or if you just saw it in some movie. When one emotion takes care of you, continues, anger, happiness. But minutes later, you realize you don't even know where you came from. Viktor Pelevin, one of the Gnostic writers of classical literature, says we live in one world offs, not of things. What does it mean? Means everything around you. The city where you live, the clothes you wear, the dreams you have are not real in the way you imagine. Are just stories that someone created and that you accepted as truth. But who wrote his story? You think they are your choices, but look closely. You like what you like because someone taught you how to like. You fear what you fear because he was conditioned to fear. Your concept of success, of failure, right and wrong, all this was put in you, even before learning to question. Every morning, millions of people wake up without realize they are following They take the cell phone, read the same news, feel the same programmed indignations, buy the same things, and at night they are convinced that they have been free. But what would happen if suddenly this structure collapsed? And it happens when someone loses everything overnight. A financial meltdown, the death of a son, a war that turns a peaceful life into ruins. The truth reveals itself. Nothing was solid. The job, the plans, the routine, everything was a magic bubble. One of an eye and it all disappears. What Pelevin does in your books is to show that this bubble never existed. For start of conversation, the problem is not that reality is compromised. The problem is that reality as we know it does not exist. So I ask you, if none of this is real, who are you really? Have you ever felt like you were in one movie? Not as a protagonist, but as one unimportant extra, lost in a scene that doesn't even know how it started. You wake up, wears an outfit you didn't really choose, take a transport you hate, works on something that barely makes sense, watch news that someone decided for you, and at the end of the day, feels tired that has no explanation. At the bottom, there's a question you don't ask out loud, but that hovers in some corner of your mind. What is the purpose of this? Viktor Pelevin would call it a great theater one. Show where each of us plays a role, but never sees the whole universe. He writes, modern man lives inside a film he didn't direct, where the only real option is to change channels. If all we see is a movie, who are the directors? The answer is, there isn't a big top villain in control of everything. No group of men in a dark room, deciding every detail of the world. Control is spread in the ideas we absorb without realizing. The media shapes your vision of what is right and wrong. Economics sets out what you might want. Technology chooses the thoughts that will occupy his mind. No visible currents, but there is an efficient mechanism to maintain you in the same place. You already noticed how everything around him was drawn, so you never have time to question. Algorithms play one content after another. Work sucks your energy. Entertainment fills the learning gaps. No final, the truth never comes because there is never room to look for it. In a Generation P, Little Skin writes about a publicist who discovers that the entire policy is fabricated, nothing but actors performing speeches previously written. The citizen realizes that there are no leaders, there are no revolutions, there are no absolute truths. There are only narratives. And what happens to anyone who notices this? What happens with whom he realizes that reality is just a theater? The same. What happens to anyone who tries to shoot in the middle of a movie? Nobody hears. The noise of the plot is always louder than the audience voice. So I ask again, what is real and what is just a reflection on the screen? If someone erased all their memories tonight, and tomorrow gave him one new name, one new family, one new story, you would remain you, or it would be someone else. The question seems absurd, but there's something disturbing about it. Whether your identity depends on your story, and your story can be changed. So what exactly are you? Viktor Pelevin writes, "Human identity is a palace made of smoke. It's solid just as long as no one blows on it. The problem is that we are always surrounded by wind. Think about your childhood. You were born nameless, no concepts, no certainties. Little by little they said who you were. First came the words sun girl, Brazilian boy, Catholic, shy atheist, expert, nice able-bodied donkey. You didn't choose any of these labels, but they got fixed on your skin, like invisible tattoos. Time has passed, and you built a story to justify these words. I'm like this because my family is like this. I think so because I always thought. I feel it because it's part of me. But what if none of this is true? In the Genghis Khan helmet, experience creates a device that erases people's minds and implants new memories. The characters live realities that did not exist, miss things that never happened, and they believe in them with all their heart. Now look around, which ensures that your life is not a written copy by others. Advertising decides what you want. Culture shapes your values. Language limits what you can think. One Russian and one Japanese don't perceive the world in the same way because your languages program them in different ways. What happens when that programming collapses? There are reports from people who have completely lost their memory and could not recognize themselves in the studio. There are cases of those who woke up from a coma without remembering one's own language. In each of these episodes, an uncomfortable truth revealed itself. Without a narrative, there is no me. Whether your identity can be erased and rewritten. So she was never real. It was just a reflection of words, habits, symbols, a mosaic that can be disassembled and replaced indefinitely. So if you're not your memories, nor your tastes, nor your certainties, what is left over? What makes a person give up his own life? Not a sudden death, but that kind of slow, silent suicide. That happens every day. The man who enters the subway at 6 in the morning and look at the floor as if being buried in life. The woman who drowns in social anesthetics, alcohol series, gossip, just not to face its own emptiness. People who no longer expect anything else of the days, but they keep walking because they have not learned to fall. What destroys first, the pain or awareness that she is useless? Viktor Pelevin writes, "The problem is not that suffering exists. The problem is that it doesn't make sense. Civilization has taught us to expect an exchange. If I suffer, I need a reward. If I miss something, I want the universe to give me back. But what happens when nothing comes back? When loss is just loss? When pain is just a purposeless noise? A scream inside an empty room. No romance nu. Fef. Pelevin describes the world where wars are manufactured to entertain the masses. People watch the bombings like someone watching one reality show, Every explosion, every tragedy, every tear, everything is one show. But for those who live inside war, the horror is real. They suffer, die, beg. But nobody listens, because in the end, their suffering doesn't matter. Now look at our world. It's not the same. Suffering became a profitable spectacle. News about tragedies spread on social networks for a few hours until they are replaced by another disaster. Someone is starving in a distant country, and seconds later, a video of an adopted cat takes up the same space on the screen. Horror and joke share the same stage, but it is individual suffering, the pain that doesn't turn to a headline, that doesn't attract likes, that nobody sees. Each person is a universe of small anguish that nobody realizes, and maybe that's the biggest of all. The pain be such a massive experience and at the same time, invisible. And if Skin Icon is right, if we are trapped in an artificial war, where we suffer not because life is cruel, but because we were told this is how it should be. If true, so the question is not how to stop suffering, but who taught me to suffer? If a bird is born inside a cage and never sees the sky, he will miss freedom. Freedom can only be desired by those who know they're prisoners. But what if the cell is invisible? And if shackles are made of concepts, of routines, of smalls, carefully designed so that no one notices? Who is in prison? Viktor Pelevin writes, "The most perfect slave is the one who finds himself free." Now think about your life, what it means to be free for you to choose. His happiness, your partner, what to watch on streaming. Real freedom. It's not having options within a closed system. Real freedom would be to be able to question your own system. But who has time for that? Who can stop and ask? Because things are like that. When there are bills to pay, series to accompany, notifications to respond. Society's cruelest trick was not create a system of oppression, was to make no one realize that he exists. In A Generation P, Pelevin describes a reality where politicians are just drivers of an automated system. They don't really rule, only represent useful narratives. True power is elsewhere. In the financial market, in the media, in the cultural industry, that shapes desires before people even realize they have them. Do you think you make rational decisions? Your concept of happiness has been programmed. Your sense of accomplishment was written by someone who never knew you. If you feel insufficient, it's because you need to keep consuming, trying to fill one void that was designed never to be filled. And what happens when someone notices this? When someone wakes up to the game, two options: or that person goes crazy, or learn to laugh. Skin, I came to write about characters who discover the farce, but instead of fighting, just laugh at because when you realize that reality is a theater, there's no point in taking everything so seriously anymore. But laughter is not escapism. Laughter is an act of revolt. He destroys fear, and fear is the only thing that keeps the system running. So I ask you, if you only knew none of that matters, what would make it different? Have you ever heard of the EU? That voice that speaks inside your head, who comments, judges feel proud, is offended, creates plans, that voice you call you. Now tell me, where exactly is this EU located? In the brain, in one specific corner of the mind, in one thought. Neuroscience has an uncomfortable response. Several studies show that the feeling of identity, this idea of a continuous self, it's just a side effect of brain functioning. The brain does not record life as a linear film, but like scattered fragments that he later brings together to create an illusion of continuity, i.e., you are not a fixed entity, but a flow of perceptions, being sown in real time. Experimental psychology also reinforces this. Benjamin Liberty's famous experiment demonstrated that decisions are made by the brain even before the person is aware of them. Your rational self only realizes the choice after it has been made. This means that the idea of free will may just be a sophisticated illusion. Viktor Pelevin anticipates this concept in the lives of insects, where characters oscillate between being human and insects without ever being sure what their true form is. What he suggests is that the identity is so mysterious as a dream, something that changes according to the environment and circumstances, and physics. In quantum mechanics, there is something called the observer effect. Experiments demonstrate that the mere presence of an observer alters the behavior of subatomic particles. This suggests that objective reality, the way we understand it, may depend on the consciousness that perceives it. If science says the self is a cognitive construct, that time is an arbitrary sequence, and that matter behaves uncertainly, depending on who then observes what remains. Maybe Pelevin was right all along. Maybe reality as we understand it be just a collective delirium, a well-told narrative. And if so, there's only one question that really matters. If none of this is real, why keep playing the game? If you got this far, congratulations. Few arrive. Most stop halfway through, distracted by through and of that. The system plays in our face. But you stayed. You thought. You questioned. And now I need to tell you something important. This channel only exists because people like you sustain this reality. Parallel. Every video I bring here, it is an effort against noise, against automatic programming that keeps us trapped in the illusion. Only doing this has a cost. The algorithm does not like those who question too much. It favors the shallow or obvious, what keeps people inside the bubble. If you notice that this channel is different, so you know that he is not driven by large corporations or giant minerals. It grows because people like you make it grow. And then comes the role that only you can fulfill. Become a channel member is not just a click. It's a resistance gesture, is to ensure that this type of content continues to exist. As a member, you gain exclusive benefits, early access to videos, private discussions, extra materials. But the most important is that you become an active part of this construction. And has more. Super Things is a direct way to show that this content has value to you. If something in this video made you think differently, took you off the automatic, even if it was for a few minutes, consider giving back. Because in the end, everything that goes back. But don't feel obligated. Just watching. So far you've achieved a lot. You already proved that it is different from most. That is not only existing, but trying to understand its very existence. Now the final question. You will keep just watching, or will be part of it?